The rain didn't fall tonight, it poured. Streets shimmered under the bruised glow of city lights, reflections stretching like broken promises. A black sedan rolled up the curb, wipers beating a frantic rhythm against the storm. Inside, a man sat still, his fingers gripping the steering wheel as if it could anchor him against the tide in his chest. His name was Ethan Cole. But tonight, no one would know that. He reached for the cap on the passenger seat, a faded baseball hat that smelled faintly of gasoline and time. The logo stitched across his chest was cheap, the kind you'd find on every other rideshare uniform in the city. It clung to him like someone else's skin. Outside, the neon sign of Lux burned bright through the Reina name, etched in gold, promising elegance, whispering exclusivity. Ethan stared at it for a long, quiet beat. That name had once been his pride, his dream carved in marble. And yet, standing here in the slick hum of midnight, he felt like a trespasser to his empire. He opened the door. The cold slapped him like a reminder. Water seeped into his worn sneakers as he stepped onto the pavement. For a moment, he just stood there, the storm wrapping him in its gray, before he walked toward the revolving glass doors of the restaurant he had built from nothing. Inside, warmth pooled like honey under the chandeliers. Velvet booths cradled customers in murmured luxury. Crystal glasses clinked softly as laughter spiraled into the high ceilings. A violin sang faintly from hidden speakers, and then silence. Not from the room, oh no. The room kept humming with opulent ease. The silence was inside, swelling as the hostess at the podium let her gaze travel from his rain-slick shoes to the cap shadowing his face. Her smile was brittle, like glass under pressure. "Sorry," she said. 2 syllables. Sharp, dismissive. "Drivers wait outside." Ethan blinked once. Twice. Rainwater dripped from his cap brim, trailing cold lines down his neck. "I just need a glass of water," he said softly. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 late nights, of hands that had scrubbed these very floors when they were nothing but raw concrete. Her eyes didn't soften. If anything, they hardened, carving down to size. "This is a fine dining establishment," she clipped, her tone lacquered with disdain. "Not a rest stop." The words sliced cleaner than a blade. Behind her, laughter blossomed from a table near the bar. A man in a navy suit raised a glass, oblivious to the storm and the man standing under its weight. Ethan swallowed the heat in his throat. Said nothing. Did nothing. Just stepped back. 1 foot. Then another. The door hissed shut behind him, with a whisper that sounded like exile. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. Neither had the ache in his chest. He looked again at the golden letters blazing through the storm. Lux. His name might not be on the sign, but his weight was carved into every corner of that place. And yet, tonight, he was no one, a ghost in his own house. Rain lashed against Ethan's shoulders as he walked away from the glowing sign, his shadow stretching long and thin across the slick pavement. The city roared around him, a blur of horns and headlights. But inside his chest, silence. A silence so heavy, it pressed against his ribs until his breath felt sharp and shallow. He stopped under an awning 2 blocks away, the cheap fabric sagging under pooled water. His reflection wavered in the darkened shop window, fragmented by raindrops. A man in a damp cap. Hunched shoulders. A stranger. He didn't always look like this. The memory slammed into him like a wave. 3 years ago, the space smelled of fresh paint and hope. Ethan stood in the middle of what was then just an empty room, bare walls, raw wood floors, dust motes dancing in thin shafts of sunlight. No velvet booths, no gold chandeliers. Just potential. He had stood with a paint roller in one hand and a dream in the other. Imagine it, he'd whispered to his younger sister, Mia, who leaned against the doorway, her camera in hand. A place where no one feels small, where the guy in work boots and the woman in pearls sit at tables right next to each other, sharing a meal that feels like home. Mia had laughed softly, brushing her dark curls back. "You and your idealism," she teased. "You're not opening a cafe, you're building a manifesto." He'd grinned then, a grin full of teeth and light. Why not both? He believed it. God believed it so much that he carved it into the soul of the place. The motto etched on the first menu? "Welcome all." He remembered saying those words on opening night, standing by the door as the first customers entered. "Doesn't matter what you wear or earn, everyone belongs here." And he'd meant it. Every syllable. So, how did it come to this? How did his dream twist into something sharp enough to cut him? The rain snapped him back to the present, cold and relentless. His fists clenched at his sides until the veins stood out in pale relief. He looked down at his borrowed uniform, the cheap fabric clinging like shame, and for the first time that night, anger began to burn through the fog. Not hot, reckless anger. Number. It was something quieter, deadlier. Resolve. They didn't recognize him? Fine. That was the point, because tonight wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing. Seeing every crack, every rot in the foundation of what he built. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from the board group chat. He ignored it. He didn't need their voices, their polished reassurances. Not now. He turned on his heel and walked into the storm, his steps slow, deliberate, like a man walking into war. Next morning, Ethan's apartment. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and rain-soaked clothes. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, an old duffel bag splayed open before him. Inside, fragments of a past life. A jacket with the faded logo of a delivery service. Scuffed sneakers, a cap that had seen better days. He lifted each piece slowly, like artifacts from an excavation site. Relics of who he used to be. Back then, he'd worked 14-hour days hauling boxes for strangers who never met his eyes. He'd known the taste of exhaustion, the sting of being invisible. He'd vowed then that if he ever made it, he'd ensure no one felt that way again. And now, his staff had turned away a man because of the clothes on his back, because they thought he was less. He pulled the jacket on. The fabric scratched against his skin, heavy, familiar. He caught his reflection in the mirror. The CEO was gone. What stared back was the ghost of a man who used to run deliveries for $9 an hour. He tightened the strap of the delivery bag and whispered to himself, voice low and even, "If they want to treat me like I don't belong, let's see how they treat everyone else." Tomorrow, Ethan Cole wouldn't be the owner. He wouldn't be the boss. He would be invisible. And that invisibility? That would be his weapon. The morning hit cold and sharp. A thin veil of mist rolling off the streets as the city stirred awake. Ethan zipped up the delivery jacket, which still smelled faintly of grease and rain, and tugged the brim of his cap low. Every detail mattered now. He tightened the strap of his old delivery bag across his chest, feeling its familiar weight anchor him to a past he thought he had buried. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had built this empire to escape this life, and now he was stepping back into it willingly, not as a defeat, but as a strategy. The morning rush had begun when he reached the alley behind the cafe. The muffled hum of voices leaked through the glass doors, the scent of roasted coffee beans curling into the air like temptation. He paused for a heartbeat, his breath fogging in the cold, then pushed open the back door. Heat hit him like a wall steam from boiling pots, the sizzle of pans, the rhythmic thud of knives on cutting boards. For a moment, he stood still, absorbing it all. His cafe, his dream, alive but poisoned at its core. No one looked at him. That was the first warning sign. Not a glance, not a nod. Invisibility. So complete, it burned. He adjusted his cap and moved silently toward the kitchen pass. Through the narrow opening, he caught glimpses, plates sliding onto trays, dishes being prepped, and that's when he smelled it. Truffle, not cheap oil, the real thing, earthy, rich, Unmistakable. His jaw tightened. No truffle dishes existed on his menu. None. He stepped closer, eyes darting from plate to plate. Steak, seared to perfection. Salmon with beurre blanc. Risotto, creamy, studded with wild mushrooms. These weren't accidents. Was orchestration, and then laughter. Light, easy, cruel. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see them. Brianna and Marcus, two of his longest-serving employees, sharing a joke as they plated another course. Behind them, a bottle of wine sat open, crimson pooling in mismatched mugs, his chest constricted. It wasn't a stolen bite between shifts. Was indulgence. Organized. Planned. He slipped into the narrow service hallway and paused, his heart thudding against his ribs like a warning drum. A clipboard lay on the hostess stand, half hidden under a stack of menus. One glance and his stomach lurched. Handwritten words in black ink. Drivers, X. Construction, X. Cheap tippers, X. Beside each, a neat column of red marks. A block list. Ethan's hands curled into fists so tight his knuckles ached. It wasn't bad service. It wasn't a mistake. There was a rule that bore his name above the door. His pulse hammered as the sound of footsteps neared. He ducked behind a pillar just as Genetho Sess approached, humming softly, flipping the clipboard shut casually. He exhaled slowly, rage threading through his veins like fire. Not yet. He couldn't explode. Not without proof they couldn't deny. That night, he tore through online catalogs like a man possessed hidden cameras, audio recorders, motion sensors. He bought them all. His hands shook not from fear, but from urgency. It wasn't a cafe anymore. It was a crime scene wearing a smile. By dawn, the equipment had arrived. Ethan slipped back into the cafe like a shadow. One by one, cameras bloomed across the space like silent eyes behind shelves, under counters, tucked into vents. He moved through his kingdom unseen, every step a promise. If they wanted to play this game, he'd play better. And this time, every betrayal would have a witness. The next day, Ethan didn't wear the jacket. He didn't need it anymore. He wore a suit. Not the sharp, power-hungry armor of a CEO, but something quieter, dark wool, open collar, sleeves rolled just enough to show he wasn't here for a photo shoot. When he pushed open the front door, the bell chimed softly. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Jenna froze at the hostess stand, her smile flickering like a bad neon sign. Recognition swept across her face in a tidal wave of dread. Mr. Cole, she stammered. The room stilled. Customers looked up from their lattes. Forks paused midair. A hush spread, thick as smoke. Ethan's steps were measured, slow, and deliberate as he crossed the floor. He stopped dead center, his presence radiating a calm that felt more dangerous than fury. He placed his laptop bag on the nearest table, unzipped it, pulled out a slim device, linked it to the cafe's main screen, and then silence was shattered. The first video rolled. Brianna's face filled the screen, her laughter slicing through the room like glass. Truffle oil dripped from a silver spoon. Marcus appeared next, plating steaks, sprinkling fresh herbs with practiced ease. The room gasped. Customers craned their necks, whispers rising like wind through dry leaves. Then came the audio. Brianna's voice, clear, cutting. Serve the ones who matter. Drivers can wait. The construction worker at table 4 slammed his coffee cup down so hard that it cracked. Clip after clip. Staff clinking glasses of stolen wine. Philly's assistant manager loading crates of premium ingredients into his car under the cover of darkness. And then the final image. A photo of that list. Do not serve. Drivers. Construction. Tourists. Cheap tippers. The words burned across the screen like a brand. The room erupted, not in applause or shock, but in something heavier: anger. Customers shifted uncomfortably, some glaring at the staff, others whispering to each other in harsh tones. Ethan let the silence settle like ash. Then he spoke, voice low, steady, every syllable a blade. "This cafe," he said, "was built on one promise: welcome all, no exceptions, no judgment." His gaze swept the room, landing on every guilty face. "You broke that promise." He turned to the staff, his words a verdict now. "Brianna, Marcus, Jenna, Phil." A beat of silence. "You're done. Collect your things. Leave." Phil opened his mouth. Ethan raised a hand. Quiet. Final. "You didn't just steal food," Ethan said softly. "You stole this cafe's soul." One by one, they walked out, eyes down, shoulders bent under the weight of a truth too heavy to fight. When the last door clicked shut, Ethan turned to the customers. His voice softened, but his words carried like thunder. "This place doesn't belong to thieves. It belongs to you. To every person who walks through that door." He paused, then, "From today, no one gets turned away. No lists. No judgment. Just meals. Just respect." No one clapped. No one cheered. The silence wasn't empty, it was reverent, because they knew something had just shifted. Something rare. Something real. Days passed. Slowly, the cafe began to breathe again. The block list vanished. So did the truffle oil. In place came something humbler, warmer, honest. Construction workers leaned against polished tables, laughing over bowls of soup. Nurses sipped tea in quiet corners, their scrubs still smelling of antiseptic and fatigue. Delivery drivers tired, sweat-streaked sat without fear, their plates full, their dignity intact. And behind the counter, wearing an apron too big for his wiry frame, stood Luis the janitor, who had never stopped caring, even when the walls rotted around him. When Ethan placed the master key in Luis's calloused hand, the man's eyes had shone with something Ethan hadn't seen in months. Not ambition, not greed. Integrity. "You don't need to know the numbers," Ethan had said quietly. "You just need to know people. The rest I'll teach you." Now, watching from his corner table, Ethan felt something unclench inside his chest as Luis trained the new staff. No questions. No judgment. Everyone who walks in is family. And this time, it wasn't just words. One evening, as the sky blushed with twilight and the cafe hummed with easy laughter, Ethan stood at the door. He looked up at the sign, the same faded letters, worn by time but unbroken. Davenport Café. His name. His promise. For a long moment, he stood there, hands in his pockets, watching the glow spill onto the street like golden warmth. He thought of that young delivery driver who had walked away days ago. He thought of himself, years ago, standing in the rain with empty pockets and a hunger bigger than his stomach. And he whispered not to the cafe, not to the customers, but to the boy he used to be, "You were never invisible." Then he stepped inside, the bell chiming softly behind him, and this time it felt like home.